Hey all, welcome to EMS Office Hours. I am Jim Hoffman.
And I'm Dave Brenner.
Dave, what is happening?
All's good here in beautiful downtown Holbrook.
I am trying to remind Josh that we are live, and hopefully he will.
And hopefully he's live as well.
Yeah. I think maybe I unfriend him. He's not showing up on my Facebook page.
And maybe he's ghosting you.
Maybe he could.
Sounds ridiculous coming from a 70-year-old, doesn't it?
He might be. and go ahead and ghosted me on Facebook. That's horrible. I'm going to shoot him a quick message, and hopefully he will see it. Josh has a problem with the early morning getter-uppers. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone that's starting to pop in here. Don't forget, please hit that little like button. Just mash it, punch it out a little bit. Let us know you kind of like it. It does help keep the video in the feed, so people that come in much later or tomorrow or whatever, it'll be up there. You know, the way these algorithms work on the Facebooks and the YouTubes and the
other social media,
the Twitters and all that good stuff. I wanted to this topic that I kind of sent you today about the shortage of EMS workers. I saw an article that popped up a few days ago. That was in a couple of news aggregator type thing that was online, and where they talked about the shortage of EMS workers and how it's becoming this major issue now, that it's been growing for the past 10 years and that the past 18 months, because of the pandemic, it's gotten worse. And I don't want to get too much, Dave, into things like pay and stuff like that, because it's been talked about,
I don't know how you're going to stop the talk about pay.
I know. I guess we got to touch on it a little bit, because I think the underlying
it's not what we'll work for pizza. It's,
right. Yeah. The underlying thing I think, and I think most people would agree, is that there's not so much a shortage of EMTs and medics. It's the shortage of the amount of money we get.
Quality career path.
Yeah,
that's what
I think. I think there was another podcaster or blogger who mentioned something like that on an article once, who said there's no shortage. That's a myth. The reality is there's a shortage of people willing to work for the amount of money that EMS providers get paid. And in a lot of ways, I can agree with that, mentality, right? And then you get people who come on who talk about, well, once we get college degrees, that's going to get us to make more money, But at the same time, I know a lot of people who have college degrees that became EMTs or paramedics, and they didn't stay because they're like, okay, what am I doing here with a college degree? I'm not getting, compensated for. I can't even pay off my student loan because of what I'm getting paid. So they go someplace else where they get paid for a college degree.
Right.
And, just as a sidebar, before the episode today, I looked at a bunch of job postings for not EMTs, but for paramedics. And we're looking at the requirements, and not one required a college degree, but they all paid, same money. It wasn't like, oh, if you have a college degree, you'll get paid $2 more or something like that.
Jim, I don't want, you and I have gone down this path before. I don't believe that a degree gets a person more money. I do believe that if you work in a field, and I see this because I see who we're hiring in my neighborhood, if you work in a field where you can be replaced by an 18-year-old with a high school diploma, even if you have a PhD, why should they pay you more than an 18-year-old with a high school diploma? There's got to be a point where the career, not the individual, the career grows up. As long as we're competing against 18-year-olds, and we are, it's not that they'll work for peanuts, but they come in, the medics we hire, we give them $27 an hour. They think they're rich. Holy mackerel, $27 an hour.
That's, I think,
I'm
that's
out of high school for
right?
2.5 years,
Yeah, you get these people, like you said, they're 18 years old. They've never really worked at a real job yet, right? And now they've got a job, like you said, it pays pretty good for an 18-year-old, and especially living at home, and lots of flexibility on scheduling, right?
The good news is there's 168 hours in a week, and you can work them all.
Right. Yeah, I know, exactly. Josh just strolled in, so he
fell out of bed.
Let me drag him into the room here.
Wow.
Yep, just rolled right out of bed.
I just need to see, Josh, do you have coffee in one of those hands? Yo, okay, just checking.
There we go.
Just checking.
That's a fancy schmancy thermos there.
Yeah, I like it because it keeps the coffee warm, although
really?
It doesn't last that long that it really matters.
Right.
It needs to be bigger.
I find the same thing. I put it. I had all the purpose of putting it into a Yeti cup,
22 ounce.
I drink it too fast for it to really matter how hot it stays. Dave, I think you're right in that respect, right? That the people that are, let's say you get into EMS. And you improve your education, you go and you get a college degree after the fact once you get the job. You're so easily replaced by those people that are coming in without the degree because everyone's making the same money, or the person that's coming in new will take a little less because they're new, right? So
sure.
there's nothing that's, I guess, that job security with it. You know what I mean? And the problem is, I think now is that we've got this shortage that's supposedly going on. I'm not seeing people write things like we're going to be importing people from other countries to come here and work, EMS, which I don't see how that's going to happen when you can't even get people to agree on, everybody has to have this national registry certification to work state by state. I don't know how you're going to bring somebody from another country to work, but I guess that's a possibility at some point.
They'll take the national registry.
If it gets crazy, that's a possibility, right? But I don't know if the education, I get so tired of that drum being hit about, everyone gets a college degree, we're going to make more money and be respected, and it's, supply and demand and all this other stuff. And the reality is like you said, Dave, but you got people coming in who don't really want to get a college degree, or they're not really concerned about that right off, right? They go to ENT school, whatever. They're going to go to paramedic school right after a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And these companies are hiring them, And then the other thing is, too, the companies are paying based on the fact of what they get paid by insurance companies. The insurance companies don't care if we have college degrees. They want you to, drag the patients back and forth to the hospital or dialysis, or from the home to the ER and stuff. And that's the way the insurance company looks at it.
It's not to their advantage for us to get a raise.
Exactly.
Well, guys, essentially in this job market, we have a perfect storm, don't we? We have that an increase in demand, an increase in supply, but nobody in the middle to move the supply and demand. We have a workforce that has been able to literally take a break. There are some people who have just not been able to stop working because we're in a hand-to-mouth economy. what is it, 24% of Americans can't survive without the next paycheck, are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's a, we're caught betwixt and between this sort of perfect revolution of where the job market and middle class wages have been artificially suppressed for the last almost 50 years. And now, and you're being driven by people, by organizations in healthcare that are profit motivated. And honestly, there's some, there's some discussion there. Should our healthcare industry be profit motivated? They say, oh, well, we don't want the government in there because, the government screws up everything, and keep your government hands off my Medicare. I think we're going to have to catch up with both a realization and an education for the American public to say that, is this the way that you do want it? Where the lowest common denominator and the cheapest resource we can get is what we're going to have treat you in the medical field. And as far as can we import paramedics, I don't see why not. We did it with nurses.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I read about that, how the nursing did that with their shortage. But I feel the issue becomes with that, Josh, is listen, you think about what you have to go through at an agency to be a paramedic, right? You get vetted with, a background investigation, you get national registry, you have to take protocol exams, skills exams, things like that. So you import somebody from another country, sure, they might have their training there, but when they come here, they've got to be brought up to speed the way things get done here. That goes state to state too. You go from one state to another, you got to get brought up to speed of how that state.
I just want to pull you back a little bit on that, Jim, and not in a bad way, but sort of say, hey, the people that we import in our minds are people who are less than us, don't have our education, they don't have our abilities. But really, truly, people who come to another country to start a life are usually the grittiest of them all. And in most cases, they're bi or trilingual already arriving on our shores. So it's not like that.
You meant gritty in a good way, right?
Gritty in a good way, yeah. I mean, they have the stuff to stay in. If that didn't come out that way, yes.
I'm just making sure.
They have the ability. They have the ability to leave their country and start a new life. That takes a lot of guts from the start. And so, you have these individuals, and you're sort of saying, what is it going to take to train them and stuff like that? I'll put it out to you that it's not going to take as much as you think. And
you misunderstand. I'm not saying train them to make them an EMT or make them a paramedic. What I'm saying is that if you think about, you go from one agency to another, there is a process of you getting onboarded for that agency. That's just for an agency. You go from state to state, there's a process of you being onboarded for that state, the med control, the certification for that state, things like that. And then people coming from other countries have to come in here and then get onboarded to the way things get done here. I remember working, and I worked in a very Russian immigrant heavy area, and 9 out of 10 of them would tell me they were doctors. I was a doctor in my country. I was an engineer in my country. And they're here, and they're doing none of it because the process to get them to be a doctor here from there was so enormous they couldn't. We've had several
physicians from other countries become paramedics through LaGuardia Community College.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to work, Dave, in any large urban area and not run across that. Not like, trip over it, but not run across it eventually.
Right. Yeah. Maybe a topic for another time, which mystifies me, is why are there so many attorneys who are paramedics? That We can come back to that another day, but massive. I know
I'm
way
just
too
like I
many.
said, I wonder. I mean, I read some of a few of the different articles, and they pretty much all say the same thing. And one of the things that I see a lot of the agencies that are struggling with is that now, because of this shortage that's out there, they are paying way more overtime just to keep ambulances staffed. They're running down ambulances and paying the overtime even to get a minimum of units out there, in the street. And so then I start thinking, okay, well, then what's the danger that's being placed now on people because of the fact that now you're getting medics and EMTs that are overworked, that are getting burnt out because they're working
And
so
they
much.
end up in
And
a
all by
hospital
the
with a nurse,
supply,
but
there's
they
not
end up
all the units there to do that.
but they're being brought to a hospital where the nurses and physicians are overworked too. I mean, this
Yes,
pandemic
that's
has done
another
that
thing.
across the board. The respiratory therapists are overworked. Everybody in the hospital, in the healthcare field, is getting clobbered with this. But I know you didn't want to go there, but it just, from my point of view, it just comes down to salary, benefits. You know,
Yeah,
you want to work, you want a workforce that's going to be there. We had this problem before the pandemic. We were heading down this path
sure.
before the pandemic. And if you look around, I don't even want to tell you what they're paying EMTs across the country, but I do want to point something out. Where do you think it's more expensive to live? New York City, or New York State, or Minnesota? That's not a trick question.
Well, I would say
It's
New
not a
York,
trick question.
but
No,
honestly,
it's not. And that is certainly the answer. It's more expensive to live in New York. And my friends who are living on Long Island or New York City as a paramedic, they're working a million jobs trying to get enough money to just try and stay here and pay the taxes.
yeah.
Yet, if you look at the average salary in New York for a paramedic, it's just shy of $49,000 a year as a base salary. Now I know when they work the extra, the rest of the 168 hours in a week, they make more. And I'm not talking about, some of the more elite places when you have an average salary of 48. I know they're paying more at Presby, and I know that the medics in Sydney are getting paid more, but that generally means somewhere they're getting paid less. So then you look at Minnesota, where I suspect, because I don't live there, I suspect the cost of living is a little bit lower than it is on Long Island. I mean, the ridiculousness of my children paying $17,000 a year real estate taxes to live in their homes. In Minnesota, the average salary for a paramedic is $50,000, almost 51. I think between the amount of money that they're making, that's more than New York, plus the reduced cost of living, I think they can't. Minnesota can't seduce all New York paramedics to go there, but they're taking them. They're taking them. There are places doing that. If you go to Washington, the state of Washington, the average salary is 55 and a half. You know what? Compared to New York, that's a home run. And we have a board, a Facebook page at LaGuardia, and I keep posting there. People they look there for jobs. We have a lot of alumni. It's open to everybody, and every once in a while I'll post a job from somewhere else, and I'll say to them, the world does not end at the end of the 5 boroughs. There's actually other places out there. Go and you know what? They're going. When you talk to our colleagues, they're out. And even when they retire, and some of them retire early in these fields, and they go somewhere else to work, and they'll work as with that national registry, they'll go there and work somewhere
Sure.
where the
I know a guy
weather's
who
nicer.
I worked, that was a FDNY medic in Brooklyn. He retired from that, and he ended up working in where I was working in North Carolina, and he was working on another pension there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's that's what goes on. But even before they retire, it's like you said, that they look to other places, not always necessarily for the salary, because it's also because of benefits. I knew a bunch of people when I was working in Brooklyn that there was a mass exodus to go to Florida because they were all fire
Promised
based.
land.
Yeah, it was all fire based, EMS, and they started going there, and the benefits were more. They found out, oh, you go to a call and there's 5 medics on the fire truck, and everyone's helping out, and you can bounce off ideas off of everybody, and it was a much better work environment they felt. So they left and went to Florida, and I see them now on Facebook, and I see the career ladder they took. Who's a lieutenant? Who's a chief? Who's a commandant of whatever? You know what I mean? They're not stuck on a truck making that same salary, working those additional hours. They went someplace else that had better benefits and
Heaven's waiting room.
Advancement.
They went to heaven's waiting room.
That's what.
The fire department. Listen, I understand the fire department down near my place in Delray, which I could probably hit it with a softball from my apartment, and they are out at all times doing EMS calls. I made a joke of this like 40 years ago. I put up a sign on my door when I was the captain in my department. I wrote, "Welcome to the Holbrook Ambulance Company," and in small letters it said, "We do fires too." It only got more and more true, except that when you look at these paid services that are doing that job, they embraced it. They recognized, you want to work here as a firefighter? Sure, you got to be a paramedic.
Yeah. Well, that's I put that fire-based agency I was working for. Most of the calls with the fire guys went on were medical calls.
Yeah.
And there was grumblings about them having to go on medical calls, and then the chief finally had a meeting and he said, "Listen, when you got hired here, you were told this is an EMS garage as well, and you will be doing medical calls. This is a big part of our response. And don't act surprised that you're doing medical calls as well. So you're supporting the paramedics that are here." And it's just a fact of life with that. But I find that environment is less stressful than working on the truck by yourself, hoping you're going to get a helping hand a lot of times.
Well, I
wonder that with the shortage of EMS and people leaving to go do other jobs. I mean, people who are leaving EMS to go work at a warehouse job because it pays more and it's less dangerous, because they're not seeing a career path in EMS. There was one mentioned article about how there's such a high percentage of the employees that are leaving after 6 months to go do other jobs because they realize it's not what they wanted. It's they start realizing there's not a lot of advancement, not a lot of pay, a lot of work involved,
a lot of lifting,
even
a lot of hazardous situations.
Day to day of when you've got short staff and every shift, the knot in your stomach of your relief not showing up. I worked at places like that where I stressed out that, oh my God, I hope to God my relief shows up so I can get out of here on time, and if they didn't, I was stuck there for another 4 hours at the minimum or the entire shift.
But Jim, is that the system or the organization?
It's the organization in a lot of ways, but it's because of the fact that the system's not supporting the job. It's not supporting the pay. It's not supporting the benefits. It's not, there's no, you get agencies that all work the same and not one is doing more than the other. So it doesn't matter where you go. Everyone is doing the same stuff.
But there's a domino effect there too.
Yeah.
We got people working in my district where I live who work for FIDNY, who work all these other districts. And if they get a late call, that is, let's say they're supposed to get off at midnight, and they get a call at 11:50, they're not going to be back until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And guess what? they expected to be, a lot of them book themselves to be at the place they're supposed to be when they get off of work. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah.
That they give each other the wink. They kind of cover each other with that.
Yeah.
But they get off at midnight, and let's say they need to be somewhere at 12:30. You're not going to be there at 12:30. You just got a job. You're on. You're not getting back until 1 o'clock, till the paperwork is done, till the restocking is done.
Yeah.
And you're not, and that causes the next person to feel the same thing. I'm going to tell you that, you know that I'm in a it's a we call it a volunteer corps, but it's really hybrid because we got paid as well. Last night I covered an empty medic shift.
I just want to look over. We have a guy who's sort of an unknown Facebook user in the chat room, and
but he knows you.
Yeah, I guess. I wish they had identified themselves, but his first post or her first post was states that don't help with the shortage doesn't allow you to test out to recertify if you were a felon. That's a sticky area. I'm not sure that
the police really don't allow that either.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be, a standard, even though there are problems with criminal justice as it is, and
it depends upon what the felony is
along that way. But a felony is.
It depends upon what the felony is. If you were an accountant felony, where you they may let you go into EMS. If you were pushing drugs, you may not get into EMS. If you were hurting people, you may not get into EMS. Go back to accounting, where
they can't.
Where you only working with
we're
numbers.
A felon in accountant, and accountants don't allow that. I mean, it unfortunately, and in our current system, we don't have a better way, but it casts a shadow of doubt over the trustworthiness of the person.
It's just a review. It's just a review. If the felony is a non violent, non-hurtful kind of thing, there are felons in EMS. We know that. There are people who have felony convictions, but the state looked at it and said, hey, this is not the kind of thing we want to rule out of EMS, and they're in.
So do you guys think the answer for this shortage that's growing and that everyone seems to be suddenly concerned about, and that's when I say suddenly, I mean because everybody's, suddenly more in the public view, probably because of social media, I'm sure is a big part of that. I mean, well, just pay everybody more and then your problem will be solved.
Well, they did studies in the 70s that basically said, more pay is not the absolute panacea. More pay doesn't necessarily mean a happier environment.
The other thing, Josh, I think better reimbursement from Medicaid, as this guy suggested, implies that when the reimbursement going in Medicaid for many of the private agencies is just going to go right to their pocket. We've seen them do that a bazillion times. Look what happened when the banks went bust.
Look,
and they got where did that money go?
We live in a situation where the executive branch is completely severed from the working individuals. And I don't mean that in a Washington Capitol political way. I mean it when you're working at a hospital and the president of the hospital walks away with an $11 million bonus and you got a 3% cost of living increase that year. I have literally worked at an organization that the outgoing president got an $11 million bonus. And we weren't even given a raise that year because we were told the hospital couldn't afford
a golden parachute.
Either way that you slice it, there has to be this aspect that, okay, guys, trickle down. Silos, it doesn't work in the country. So, if you want to argue it about the country some other day, I'll be glad to take you on. But one thing that we do see, when the president of Chase Bank, gets a couple of $100 million and their average teller has to work 3 jobs because they're getting paid $16.95 an hour, there's something broken about the system. And whether you talk globally or just to your organization, I can bet you can look that there's an inequity in the way money is distributed for work.
All right, let's not get too crazy as we move away from social stratification, from people who work hard getting paid more than people who don't work hard, from people who went out to get educated and busted their butts for years to get jobs. Should a doctor get paid more than an EMT? Most probably. Should a baseball player? I don't know.
Well, let me ask you, the way that I see it, just to kind of wrap this up, because like you said, we've talked about this many, many times. I'm sure a lot of other podcasts are going to be talking about this as well, because there's articles have come out and they're kind of all over, peppered all over social media now, and they want to jump on this topic and get their points of view across. But for me, I feel like everything that we've talked about, whether it's just increasing salaries, whether it's increasing or the reimbursement rates, offering more benefits, it's almost like this, like a cycle that they all have to kind of happen together. You know what I mean? Because you'll get people who argue that, well, the insurance companies aren't going to pay more unless we get higher educated people to warrant a higher reimbursement. Like doctors will get a higher reimbursement and things like that.
And I don't agree with that statement, by the way. I mean,
I
know that you said it a lot of times, but you know what? A welder doesn't go and have to get a PhD.
What are you talking about?
A welder doesn't have to go and get a PhD, and they make way more than paramedics do, or EMTs.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I don't feel that it's a necessity to get more money. What I'm trying to say is that the argument you're going to see, and the argument you're going to get is that, well,
what do you deserve that
can't pay more money hourly or hire more people or whatever without having higher reimbursements from insurance companies. Insurance companies might not want to reimburse higher if they don't see that the workers are at an education level and the services that they're providing warrant a higher reimbursement, and then round and round you go with that. I mean, a welder doesn't have a PhD, but a welder's not getting reimbursed by insurance companies. You know what I mean? So electricians make more money than EMTs and medics do, but they're not getting reimbursed by insurance companies. This is where the agencies are getting their money to pay the providers that are working there. They're not getting it from. It's not a.
But our salaries.
You wish you could tell people, okay, well, you're going to call 911. This is how much it's going to cost, and if you don't pay it, we're going to hound you. We're going to collect on you, and whatever. Eventually, your insurance company gets billed, and you accept whatever the ambulance company accepts, whatever the insurance company pays.
Listen, you want to get paid like a welder, become a welder. That argument just, we can't compare. You can't compare.
Why can't you?
So listen. So this guy comes into a house. He goes into a house, and the people in the house say, listen, a plumber goes into a house, and they say, listen, this drain, it's not draining. We can't wash anything in the sink. The whole thing is stopped up. We need you to fix it. So the plumber goes underneath the sink. He clanks around, clunk, clunk, clunk. 5 minutes later, he comes out. The drain is drained. He opens it up. The water flows, and they say to him, "How much does it cost?" He says, "You hear 5 minutes. How much could this cost?" He says, "It's $300." And the guy looks at him. He says, $300. He says, "I'm a neurosurgeon. $300 times 12. That's $3,600 an hour." He says, "I'm a neurosurgeon. I don't get $3,600 an hour." And the plumber looks at him and says, "When I was a neurosurgeon, I didn't get $3,600 an hour either." Listen, you want to get paid like a plumber, become a plumber. You want to get paid like a welder, become a welder.
Joke.
It's
inaccurate joke. Come on.
Hold on.
And it's misleading.
You didn't let me finish. My very first class, when I teach EMTs, I tell them what they're going to earn. I tell them the earning potential. I tell them the average annual salary. I tell them about how many people get hurt and how many people get killed in EMS. They need to know that going in, eyes wide open, And I also tell
I
them,
wish I had that when I went to EMT.
I also tell, no, I'm not kidding you. You can ask the students in my class, and I also tell them there are ways in EMS to make more money than EMTs or paramedics within EMS. There are ways to do it. And, there is a community training center in Brooklyn. 3 of the guys from my first EMT class at LaGuardia College opened it up. They're making more money than any 4 or 5 or 6 EMTs combined. They figured it out. They bought the equipment, and they're a training center for EMS courses, and they're training doctors in ACLS. You need to go in eyes wide open. If you're going into a field that's going to get paid poorly and expect to get paid a lot, that's wacky.
Yeah,
It's not.
do research to find out how much the salary is to do the job.
Who promised you a rose garden in EMS?
It's not the expectations that you'll be paid well. I think that a lot of people go into it because of a basic interest in serving the public and the public good, and as well as some of the fringe.
Well, you got that. Enjoy it
in that sense of how of the job, what the job can be, and it's great. But as you grow in the position, and as you grow older, your Maslow hierarchy changes a little bit, right?
Wait a minute. So when you're 60 years old, you don't want to be lifting people out of a pool of vomit, carrying them up from the basement. That's not what you want to do.
Well, is that what you want to do? You seem
to
see, do it.
I see. I do see it.
Still
I do. I'm asking you if that's what you want to do.
What I want to do, my personal preference, I'm saying that it's not part of this. What is part of this is the general description of most people over time want a family, want to spend time with a family, want security for the family, and want a better life for their children, which usually in our society.
So you have to do things, Josh, that make those opportunities appear.
But if you can't go into EMS and follow that path and live that life, then it is not a career, is where I'm going.
Yeah,
agreed.
EMS is not a career.
Agreed.
And we will have problems as long as EMS is not a career, which is a bad thing.
Unless we combine it, unless we make it fire EMS careers, unless we do that.
Why do we have to lean on somebody else that way?
We don't have to lean. Listen.
Why can't the study of medicine and emergency medicine and the field application of emergency medicine be something other than putting wet stuff on the red stuff?
Listen, it can, but that's a whole evolution. We've discussed that, the ways to change the field. We've discussed it. The question is, though, going into it, listen, I love you. Don't change until you get married and then change. Boom. All right. That's the same thing with this field. You don't go into a field saying it's going to change.
Yeah.
It is what it is right now. When you went into this field, this is what it was.
Josh, think about the early days of this
podcast,
Josh. Some of the first things we had talked about was pay and, comparing us to fire department and police and sanitation and why do accountants get for a city get paid more than the EMTs do for a city, and we talked about this for years on end.
We are artificially
nothing's ever changed.
Yeah, and part of the reason is nothing has really changed in the last 20 years since we've started this podcast. And that is the problem. And now we're in a different situation, guys. There is a worldwide shift going on. There's a nationwide shift going on. And the average worker is not standing for their needs not being met when the executive worker has their needs met 20 times over. And there has to be a sort of
But you go back to what Dave said, Josh, you can't go into it going, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to make this much money, and eventually the president of the hospital is going to give me a kickback to make things equal.
Very few people go into EMS saying, "Oh boy, the money."
Right.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree. Oh, absolutely, they do. Absolutely. We actually get grants. tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants to get people so that we take them off. And it is an advancement for them, but it's just not the biggest, to get them off public assistance. Train them to be EMTs. It's easy. It's a 200-hour class. Train them to be EMTs. We can get them into a productive, satisfying job with benefits, and it gets them off public assistance. We get money for that. I hear myself.
We're taking people because it's easier to train, and so you're basically saying our work is pretty easy. You learn it pretty quick.
200 hours is nothing. It's nothing. How long did you go to high school? Not you in particular, but how long did you go to high school? Listen, I've taught EMT classes in high school. People did it on the side. They were taking a full-time schedule in their senior year, and they became EMTs by coming in a period early, and they became EMTs.
And I think most people in EMS, a lot of people, when they become EMTs or become paramedics, you are doing it on the side. I took my EMT course on the side, took my paramedic course on the side. I wasn't able to take that stuff full-time. I took those courses, part-time. And I did take a pay cut when I went from, a regular job to become an EMT. And I knew
you guys are going to fight me on that.
But
I know you guys are going to fight me on this. I know you're going to fight me on this. But when you're on the bus and you've been around and you've rubbed shoulders with a bunch of different guys from different areas, what is your experience been? That all guys in how they approach the job, on how they approach the patient, their patter with the patient, their
banter,
interaction,
banter, interaction,
has all been equal across the board, no matter where they came from? Or have you noticed that certain individuals coming from certain backgrounds do better?
No.
You haven't?
No. When you say certain backgrounds, I don't know what you're talking about. You need to be more specific.
I'm talking about
I can't even let
certain professional backgrounds.
I don't know what you mean. You got to be specific.
A guy who has never done anything before except stocked grocery bags or swept a floor in a mechanic shop, right? Didn't have those extra skills. You basically take that. That was the person you were talking about before, the program where they take people out of the homeless shelters and they retrain them.
Some of them are fabulous. And some people that we get coming out of colleges, and I've had pre-med students take my classes, I wouldn't trust them to put a Band-Aid on me. All right, that they don't have the civility and the humanity.
I was more thinking of established where not they're coming straight out of school, where they're coming out another line of work. I have seen guys that have been shoe salesmen, making about as much as EMT, want something different than smelly feet. All right. And they go into EMS and they use their background in shoe sales to create a rapport with the patient that is just remarkable. Why?
But that's what people do. But there are people who come from shoe sales and they do a rotten job in EMS. So I don't think you can classify people coming from that training, that background, as being the people that are going to be good. It just doesn't. That's as if to say all doctors know how to relate to people. They do not. All nurses know how to relate to people.
I don't feel that saying
they do not. So not even counselors, not even psychologists. I mean, oh my gosh, there's no cluster. There's no cluster. I don't find it. They can come from anywhere and be anything. And I think you went down the wrong rabbit hole with that one, Josh. Because when I ask you to be specific, if you can't be specific and provide empirical data, you got nothing.
The specificity is not necessarily the job that they came out of or the place that they came out of, but the type of work that they did or the type of work they had to learn to do, that they can now have skill sets that translate over to EMS. And just like your kid out of medical school who never learn those situations. And some doctors
Never learn it.
Coddle doctors, they'll never learn it all the way to the very end. They could be chief of surgery in their department, and they still have no interplay skills with a patient, none whatsoever.
Right. And they could be
But
chief of psychiatry too, which is amazing.
But people who, what I am trying to say here is that it's a trainable skill. And that somebody who's had practice in it already and comes in from a different skill, a different job with those skills into EMS, they do better than a lot of the people coming in from EMS from elsewhere who didn't have a clue of what EMS was.
Maybe.
All right,
I'd like to see.
We took a little bit of a little off to the side there on it. But why don't we wrap it up there? Because, like I said, this is one of those things that is never going to be solved. I don't think.
You know what? I think it will be solved, Jim. I hope it will be solved because it's not just a matter.
We can't even resolve the end.
We're not going. Listen, hold on.
Please.
We should never come back to this topic again.
We will. This is an.
I try to stay away from it for like months at a time because
it's like a wound that's bleeding. You're supposed to leave it alone, and we can't.
I know.
You just keep scratching it. What do you think is going to happen?
Because it's a problem with the EMS, and everybody on this podcast, every one of us had to find an alternate way to make a living to supplement the. Well, Dave, you don't even get paid in EMS.
Well, I don't get paid directly for my patient care, but I get paid plenty in EMS.
Oh,
you might remember where you met me.
Right. But
I could tell you how much that was, but I'd have to kill you. That was.
Don't tell Josh if it's more than EMT.
No, he tried to get me.
The EMTs below you, Dave.
He tried to get me to do it, and I.
How dare you make more than EMT? All right. Well, let's end it there. I wanted to go into something else, but the secondary topic today is also something that it'll
contentious.
We'll end up talking about it way longer than the 10 minutes or so we've got left here. So we'll save it for the next episode, I think.
So the last 10 minutes of our show will be Dave on guitar, accompanied by.
I got it. I can play the Tuesday. Oh, I got them Cyanosis Blues Again, Mama. A song I wrote in 1981.
Oh my God! You should make a YouTube video.
I was
clean. I was
that
cleaning
way
up
people
my
could
desk.
turn it off.
Remember the songs, the New York Protocol songs?
Oh yeah, the ACLS protocols. 2 Live Nurse. There was a group called 2 Live Nurse that came out with Rocking to the Algorithm.
I can't. I can't. I just can't. I just start getting me agitated with the America's Got Talent that just stopped, and they had all the nurses
frozen
and EMTs
and so
there.
Okay, you're back.
That was singing. There's like 30 of them. They were the heroes, whatever the hell they called them, heroes something on America's Got Talent, and they were singing, trying to get their $1 million contract. To be.
And how were they, Jim? I didn't even watch it.
It was ridiculous. What it is? I understand that the little shtick they had there, they were coming in there with the fact that they were heroes and they worked in the pandemic and all this stuff, but every week they were on with wearing scrubs every week. And I was like, just stop it. Stop. You only hit that drum so many times. All right. Just like this whole let's get more money thing.
Yeah, we should do it for free. Everybody volunteer.
I'm on board.
Okay.
No, I'm not sure about that, but like I said, I think there's a lot of moving parts. I don't think there's any one solution to the problem, which is why I think it's going to continue to go on. And our last show, whenever that comes, we'll end up talking about it one last time on the very last episode of the show, just so that we get it out there. one more time.
Well, here's an idea, parting thought to just throw out there for next time is, how the Israeli Defense Force is made up of civilians. Every of age civilian must be conscripted into the to the military, do a mandatory 2 years of military or something like that, and then they can go on to their lives of, if that's more military or being a dentist. Maybe we should have something like that, so we take the pay out of EMS entirely and just say, okay, it's a mandatory 2 years. Everybody has to do what they can. And then we just keep it on. That way we have an ever-flowing body of people coming into EMS. Every citizen is then trained in some form of EMS.
No.
Yep, it's coming.
No. All right, we're in the day, guys. Appreciate everybody, anyone that popped in and took a listen today. I really appreciate it. Dave is getting his guitar out.
I am. I'm going to play.
It's our Monday morning
I'm going to
special.
play the exit theme
He's gonna play the exit theme.
when we're done.
So, as always,
Go ahead,
everybody,
Jim.
I am Jim Hoffman.
Josh Knapp,
I'm Dave Brenner.
play us out, Dave.
That's it.
I'll give you another one if you want, but that was it. Yes.
All right, we'll live with that. All right, there we go. All right, everybody, stay safe.